Johns Hopkins Science Review, presented by the Johns Hopkins University and WAAM in Baltimore. This is the Johns Hopkins University, famed for 75 years for its contributions to science and the humanities. Here in its many laboratories, Hopkins scientists are constantly probing into the still unknown secrets of science, which, when discovered, will be translated into benefits to be enjoyed by you, the people of America. Each week, we look over the shoulders of those scholars as they work and catch a glimpse of the results of their scientific research. This week, we will see the work of one of the men behind the men of science as we watch the master glassblower. To tell you more about this week's program, here is Lynn Poole of the Johns Hopkins University.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Johns Hopkins Science Review. Now, this week, we want to tell you about a very important man in science. Yet, this man is not a scientist. He holds no academic degrees. He's very rarely mentioned in scientific journals, those scholarly publications of scientists. Nevertheless, he's a very important man. He stands behind the scientist. He works with him. He's a very important cog in the scientific wheel, in the wheel that turns out for you and for me so many times, year after year, important benefits to our very lives. Well, now, who is this man? This man is the glassblower, a master craftsman whose skill is one of the most delicate in any field in the entire world. He's a very important man, but you have probably thought of the glassblower as the man at the county fair or at the circus. You've probably seen him there, and perhaps you've brought home something like this. A little figure of a duck, or perhaps it's been of a reindeer, or perhaps it has been a glass object of some sort for your mantelpiece. Well, this is the sort of thing that you associate with the glassblower, and if you do, you will recognize the glassblower and his hawker that are at work right now.
Yes, sir, ladies and gentlemen, step right up and see these beautiful, these gorgeous little glass figurines. Yes, sir, step right up here and get some of these finely wrought decorations for your mantelpiece. Now, take your pick of the bargain of the century, these fabulous creations of the master glassblower at a price any and all can afford. Now, go away, son, you're too young, and besides, you're buzzed. Now, how about you, Bud? Step right up here. Just step on up and take a look at these marvelous creations of the master glassblower. The marvelous creation of the master glassblower's art.
Perhaps you do have some little glass novelties like these in your home. When we think of the glassblower's art, we usually think of such objects. But at the peak of his profession, the glassblower labors in a laboratory at one of the large universities, producing intricate scientific equipment. Scientific apparatus made entirely of glass and exact to the thousandth of an inch. The special equipment made by the glassblower has played its part in many scientific experiments and discoveries. Glass is used extensively in laboratory equipment because of its hardness, its transparency, and its resistance to chemical action. No commercial glass company can foresee the day-by-day needs of a scientist. Such companies cannot afford to stock equipment which may be used for only one experiment. Therefore, it is necessary for large universities to employ a glassblower to turn out such special equipment as you see here. Given only a rough drawing, in many instances, the glassblower must turn out complicated equipment, often exact to the 25,000th of an inch. To make such equipment, the glassblower must be a master craftsman. And we want you to meet such a master craftsman now.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to present to you Mr. John Lehman, really a master glassblower from Johns Hopkins University. Mr. Lehman's busy at work here now, but Mr. Lehman, I wonder if you ever saw a hawker like this at a circus or a fair, and did you ever blow any glass at a fair?
Yes, I was at the Wales Fair for a while, Mr. Poole. And my dad and I, we used to do it in the cellar at home.
Well, one thing I think everyone will be interested in as they watch you work here is why you keep turning that glass the way you do.
Well, the reason why I keep turning it like this, Mr. Poole, is if I was to stop turning this glass for just a half a second, why, it would get a big gob of glass on one side. Then when you go to make a round object, you couldn't do it. And I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen to this piece of glass right now, unless I play around with it. But it's just about ready to be blown up into a bulb now.
Let's see what we can do. Well, I think you did pretty well with that one. Mr. Lehman, why do you put the glass back in the fire after you've already blown the bulb?
Well, as it sets out here in the air, it chills off. Therefore, it creates a strain in the glass. So you generally put it back in the fire to sort of anneal it and bring it down to a low temperature.
Well, let me suggest something here, Mr. Lehman. When we came on the air, our friends were watching you blow that bulb, but as everyone could see, you already had started that bulb, hadn't you?
That's right, yes.
Well, try this piece of glass. This one that is absolutely straight with no bulb blown on its surface. And let's watch you from the very beginning as you blow the bulb. Incidentally, Mr. Lehman, how hot is that fire?
This flame right now, Mr. Poole, is about 1,100 degrees centigrade. Of course, it all depends on the size of the tubing that you're working with, how hot your fire is. You generally work between anywhere from 9 to 1,800 degrees centigrade.
Well, I imagine it would also depend on the object that you intend to make, how hot you have to have your glass.
Yes, that's right. Now, if you notice, I'm still turning this glass, even though it's in the fire, and even when I take it out of the fire. That's one of the most important things of glass blowing, is learning how to pull these points on that.
What do you mean pulling the points, or can you show us?
Well, that's what I'm doing now, Mr. Poole. You just stretch it out for this here short end of a piece of glass here so I can hold it. Then I melt it off here, and then you lay that piece down. Now, if this point ain't absolutely straight, when I go to blow a bulb, why, it'll be crooked on me. So that's the reason why, see, it was a little crooked then, so now I'm going to straighten it out.
Well, and that's really one of the first and most important things to learn in the art of glass blowing.
Yes, that's right. Now everything is all set to blow one of these bulbs. And you can also use one of these bulbs to offer 4 or 5 different things at a time. You can use it for a Hickman oil pump, or you can use it for a boiling flash. You can use it for a trap that goes onto an oil pump. Oh, there's a number of things that they use these for. And when you melt the glass, you sort of push it together a little bit so in order to weight it up a little bit. Of course, this bulb can't be too thin.
Of course, if it were too thin when you tried to blow the bulb, then it would probably break on you.
Yes, sir. Now, the reason why I done that first was to get that glass evenly distributed so that it's almost the same thickness all the way around.
Well, you can blow the bulb larger than you had it there, though, can't you?
Yes. That's what I'm getting ready to do now. Now, if you'll notice, that's evenly heated all the way around. Then you take it out and you sort of let the glass set for a second.
Then you put it back in the fire to anneal it.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Lehman, a moment ago, you said that really a bulb such as this is basic in blowing glass and can be used for many things. You mentioned the Hickman diffusion pump. How would you go about preparing a piece of glass for that diffusion pump?
Well, this here bulb that I have now is just a little large for a pump, but I can show you how there's generally 6 of them in a row. And the way you do that, you just heat it up in one spot, and you don't get it too hot, so you just sort of push it together very gently. And all the while, you just keep turning and turning and turning. Boy, I can see my father now. Boy, did he used to holler at me. Turn the thing, turn it. So then you just reverse it and you do the same procedure on the other side.
Incidentally, speaking of your father, you're the third, or is it the fourth generation of glassblower?
I'm the third one. My dad, he taught it to me, and his father showed it to him before him.
Well, how about your boy?
Oh, I got a little youngster that's 7 years old, and I think he's going to be interested in it also. I generally take him down on the school on a Saturday morning and let him play around with it, because he's just about at the right age when a boy should start to learn it if he's going to make it a career. Of course, glass blowing, that is hand glass blowing, that's getting to be a dying art. They make everything almost by machine now, and they can't get any glass blowers.
Well, let's take a look at this. When you finish this ball for the diffusion pump, it looks something like a rubber tire, doesn't it?
That's right, yes, sir.
Punched in on both sides. Well, there's one thing that I would like to show our friends. This piece of glass that I have here in my hand is made of one piece, and it's an entire spiral that Mr. Lehman made for us. And if you see, we push it together. It's a spring-like, comes out, you can turn it, pull it back and forth like an accordion. Now, this glass is used often in scientific research. In the scientific laboratories that you might visit, you'd find a lot of pieces of glass like this. And, of course, it has to be made by a specific measurement. Mr. Lehman, give us a start and show us how you prepare such a coil.
Well, when making a coil, Mr. Poole, it all depends on what kind of a drawing you got and the size of the tubing that they want to use and the diameter of the coil. And that will run anywhere from 6 millimeter to 12 millimeter OD. Now, in order to start a coil, why, you just heat the glass up just a little bit. Just enough so it's pliable and you can make sort of a loop in it. That's so you can stick it on a manville.
On a what?
You put it on what we call a manville.
Well, what's a manville?
As soon as I get this loop made, why...
Sorry.
Now, this is the way you start it. Now, that is round, or it's supposed to be round. Now, if I had a manville, and say they wanted a coil 1 inch in diameter, I would take this piece of glass, slip it over the manville, and hold both manville and glass in my left hand. Then I would start it here and just get that glass just warm enough so it will wrap itself around the manville. Now, you dasn't get it too hot or it'll get out of shape on you. So then you just start turning the manville in that manner. Of course, on the manville, why, you have either a chalk line or a pencil mark that you follow so you get the right dimensions between each coil.
Well, as you're turning there and making another loop, let me ask you something. You make the large coils, probably 1 or 2, I think I saw one almost a foot wide. You do that on a lathe, don't you?
Yes, you hold it in the lathe, and if you're having a piece of carbon that's big enough, it only comes 3 inches in diameter, you generally go to a piece of brass. And if the brass is not large enough, why, they generally bring in a piece of a tree, which they turn down in the lathe and made round. Then we take a piece of wet asbestos and wrap it around that block of wood, stick that in the lathe, and then you have to turn the lathe with one hand and hold your Bunsen boiler underneath that and just turn it and let the glass shape itself.
And then you keep winding that around until you get a coil such as this.
That's right.
Mr. Lehman, I'd like to go back to something else here. You blew the bulb and then the side punching in, as I would call it. But I saw one in your laboratory that had a long arm on it that came out and was bent. And was that put right into this bowl?
Yes. If you like to, I could show you how we start to make one of those. And that all comes back to that point, blowing a round bulb. Now, you start off the same way. Like I said before, you can use these for 4 or 5 different things. If you want to make a trap for an oil pump so that if some Somebody accidentally turns the wrong stopcock, and there's a vacuum in there. When it sucks that oil back, it won't go into your system. You have this here trap.
Now, that's pulling your point again, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Now, you'll always see me knock the edge of that sharp piece of glass off there. That's so if you lay it down on a bench and you accidentally move your hand over, that point will stick into your fingers or your hand, which happens quite awful if you're not thinking of what you're doing.
It's a good precautionary measure you'd better take.
Then you judge the size of the bulb that you want blown, and then you pull another point. And it all boils back to that point business again.
You keep coming back to that all the time.
Yes, and now when I get this pulled off, I can almost show you why it's necessary.
From where I'm standing, that looks pretty true and straight.
Now, if it isn't true, you turn it around. This here, if you'll notice, that's almost absolutely true. Now, this here point is out a little bit, so you just stick it back in the fire and don't get it too warm. And as you keep turning it, you can almost tell when that's straight. Now, there ain't a wobble in that. That's what comes from pulling points.
That also comes from a lot of practice and experience, Mr. Lehman.
That's right. I know for 6 months that's all I'd done. My dad, oh, boy, that was one thing that he was really particular about.
And he was after you about those points.
Yes, it was, and it really is paying off now.
How long have you been at this business of glass blowing, Mr. Lehman?
I started when I was 7 years old down there in my father's basement, and then, of course, I didn't want to go to school, as I regret it now, but he gave me an ultimatum. It was either school or work. So I went to work. And I started at the General Electric Company up in Schenectady, New York, when I was 15 years old. And I'm 48 now, and I'm still learning. Now, you'll notice I'll just push that glass together just a little bit. Now you'll see in the fire there's a flat spot. So what you do here is you just take it out of the fire and just give it a little puff. Sort of even that there gob of glass so it's an even thickness all the way around. Now we're just about ready to go.
That's about as perfect a bulb as I've ever seen, Mr. Lehman.
Now, in order to put a sidearm on there, you just heat up one spot of this bulb. And you gently put it about there. And you blow that hole out, and you close this end up. Then you have your other piece of glass, which is all ready, and you just knock that little fuzz off there, and you take this here, this is what we're going to call a sidearm now. You take them and you just sort of stick it on there just lightly. Now you bend this part up, and this is the part that goes on your vacuum system. You heat maybe a half inch or so of this here glass, and you don't get it too hot. Then you just give it a little flip, give it a little puff, and then set it down.
There you have a sidearm that I judge could be used in the chemistry laboratory for many types of experiments.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Lehman, everything seems to start with the bulb here, and so does the condenser that you wanted to blow, so we could demonstrate another part of the work that you're doing.
Well, I have one here, started here, Mr. Poole, and there's a piece of apparatus that you're going to see later on. I can finish this here one up. These here bulbs that I'm blowing now, they generally have, maybe 10 to 12 inside of a tube, which we call a water jacket. This here, the water circulates around these here bulbs and keeps them cool at all times. These bulbs have to be blown a certain size, certain thickness, and therefore you always start out with one that you think is pretty near right, and you go accordingly. Well, it always comes back to that turning business. You've got to just keep turning and turning.
Well, turning and pulling points and being able to blow these bulbs seem to be the three most important things about glass blowing.
That's the basic things, Mr. Poole, yes, sir.
Well, of course, when you blow these bulbs, you don't decide what size they're going to be. Doesn't the scientist tell you?
Yes, sir. He brings in a drawing of what he wants made, and then from there, then it's up to me. Sometimes I have to make maybe 3 or 4 changes in this piece of apparatus.
You call this a condenser tube, Mr. Lehman. While you're blowing the next bulb on this condenser tube, I'd like to show a finished condenser tube that we have over here.
Yes, I'll just keep right on finishing.
As you said, the condenser tube filled with the, the various bulbs is placed inside a straight tube. And here you see the little tiny bulbs that Mr. Lehman has already blown are placed inside a straight tube so that the chemical action that the scientist wants can take place. We'll come back to this in a moment and show you a little more about this condenser tube and tell you what it is. But in the meantime, let's see how Mr. Lehman's getting along with the condenser bulbs.
You just keep going on, and if he wants 6 bulbs, 8 bulbs, or 12, whatever the professor or the doctor wants, why you just keep going along and making them that their way.
Do you have any idea what is the largest condenser you've made?
The largest one that I ever made, Mr. Poole, out of glass, was the outside jacket was 110 millimeter, which is a little over 4 inches.
Well, while you're doing that, you spoke a moment ago about the fact that the scientist, the professor, gives you a drawing. And I have a drawing here that I'd like to show. This is the drawing that was given to Mr. Lehman by one of the professors at Johns Hopkins University, just a very rough sketch to show what he wanted in a piece of apparatus to be used in his laboratory. This is a basic design for this Othmer apparatus that you see here. This apparatus, which is working now, was developed by Dr. Donald Othmer of the Polytechnic Institute of Brooklyn and was made for Mr. Lehman, by Mr. Lehman last week for Dr. A.I. Johnson of Johns Hopkins, who wanted certain particular changes made in the original design. The Othmer that you see boiling away here is used to determine the relationship between a boiling liquid mixture and the vapor that's given off by this liquid. As a matter of fact, this piece of apparatus that you see here is an apparatus that is a pilot model. This pilot model has been designed so that it can fit to be erected 10 to 15 feet in diameter and 50 feet high. So you see, Mr. Lehman has had a really important part in a piece of scientific research that is just beginning and will go on for some time. Mr. Lehman, we're back to a small tube here, I see, and I think I recognize what you're ready to do.
Well, this here is snow, what we generally use on our Christmas tree, Mr. Poole. Although it's rather expensive to buy, it costs about $75 a pound, and in order to get a pound of this, it would take a sugar barrel, wouldn't be able to hold it. So I'll try to make one for you. That there glass, Mr. Poole, is so thin that it can't be measured. The only way you can do that is weigh it. I'll see if I can try to make another one. If I don't make that, why, I'll try to make you a bunch of hot dogs.
Well, hot dogs would be good for summer picnics, and the snow would be good for our Christmas tree, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's a nice bunch of hot dogs here, Mr. Poole.
Well, let's go back to that snow again. I'd like to see you blow that once more. Well, that was a loud crack, Mr. Lehman, and a very fitting close, I think, to the demonstration that you've given us here tonight on really the science of glass blowing. And I think most of you people will agree with me that although Mr. Lehman has provided us with a great deal of entertainment, you can see for yourselves that although he is not a scientist, claims not to be a scientist, he takes a very important part in all of the scientific research that goes on at Johns Hopkins University, by using his skill to provide this research scientist with all of the apparatus that he needs for his research. And we hope that you'll be with us next week when we present another demonstration of today's science, when we present the magic eye.
As long ago as 1888, it was discovered that a ray of light falling upon a metal surface gives off negative charges of electricity known as electrons. This discovery led to the invention of the photoelectric cell, or magic eye. The power of the magic eye has been used for many purposes. It has been used to regulate industrial equipment, to control the lenses of cameras in speeding reconnaissance planes, as an automatic opener for swinging doors, and for many other uses. Next week, we will demonstrate many of the uses of the photoelectric cell when we bring you the magic eye. The Johns Hopkins Science Review is produced by Lynn Poole. Directed by Paul Kane. The associate producer is Robert Fenwick. Associate director, Ken Kelpie. Art direction by Barry Mansfield. Your narrator has been Joel Chaseman.
Portions of this program have been mechanically reproduced. The Johns Hopkins Science Review originated in the studios of WAAM